If you're a Sigma stuck in the wrong career, you already know something's off. Maybe you're good at your job. Maybe you're even successful. But every day feels like you're wearing someone else's skin, like you're playing a character that doesn't match who you actually are. And the worst part is everyone keeps telling you to adjust, to be more social, to fake it till you make it, to just push through. But pushing through doesn't fix the fundamental problem. You're in a career that wasn't built for how your brain works, and no amount of motivation or positive thinking is going to change that. So let's talk about what actually makes sense. Not what your parents wanted, not what looks good on paper, not what everyone else is doing. What actually fits the way you think, work, and exist in the world. Because there are careers where being a Sigma isn't a disadvantage you have to overcome. It's the exact reason you'll excel. And once you find that fit, everything changes. Not because work becomes easy, but because it finally stops feeling like you're fighting yourself just to get through the day. The first one is non-negotiable. You need work that rewards thinking, not talking. Here's what kills most Sigmas in their careers. They end up in jobs where the work itself is fine, but success depends on how well you sell yourself, how often you speak up in meetings, how good you are at small talk, how visible you make your contributions. And all of that feels like a completely separate job that has nothing to do with actually doing good work. You probably learned this early. Maybe in school when class participation counted as much as your actual test scores. Or in your first job when the person who got promoted wasn't the best performer but the best talker. The one who knew everyone's names, who remembered birthdays, who always had something to say, even when they had nothing valuable to add. And you watched that happen thinking, this doesn't make sense. Talking about work shouldn't matter more than actually doing work. But in most careers it does, because most workplaces reward visibility over substance. They promote people who are good at looking busy, not people who are quietly competent. And as a Sigma, you're wired for the opposite. Your brain goes deep. You spend hours thinking through a problem before you even start working on it. And when you do speak, you've already filtered out everything irrelevant. You're not thinking out loud. You're presenting conclusions. That approach doesn't land well in environments that value constant communication. People think you're not contributing because you're not talking. They assume silence means you have nothing to offer, when really you're 3 steps ahead. You just haven't verbalized it yet. And by the time you do, the conversation has moved on. So your best ideas never get heard. Not because they weren't good, because the timing didn't fit the extroverted pace everyone else operates at. This is why careers like software development, electrician work, graphic design, production planner, or even running your own woodworking or renovation business makes sense for someone with a Sigma personality. The work speaks for itself. You're judged on output, not performance. On what you produce, not how well you perform producing it. Nobody cares if you're quiet when your work gets the job done. Nobody cares if you don't join them for lunch every time as long as your analysis is accurate. The results are the conversation, and that's the only conversation you actually want to have. Number 2 is critical. You need autonomy more than you need a big team. You've probably worked in team environments where every decision required consensus, where you couldn't move forward without 3 approvals, or someone was always checking in, asking for updates, wanting to sync up on progress, and it drove you insane. Not because you can't work with others, because you don't need that level of oversight. You're perfectly capable of managing your own work, and every layer of coordination just slows you down. A Sigma is, by nature, a self-starter. You don't need someone telling you what to do. You need clarity on the goal. Then you need to be left alone to figure out how to get there. You'll ask questions if you hit a real blocker. But most of the time, you'd rather research the answer yourself than wait for someone to get back to you. You move faster alone. And you move better when you're not constantly justifying your process to people who don't understand it. This is why micromanagement is death for Sigmas. A manager who needs daily updates, who questions every approach, who wants to be involved in every decision. That doesn't feel like support. It feels like surveillance, like they don't trust you to do the job you were hired to do. And that erosion of trust kills your motivation faster than any amount of hard work ever could. You need a manager who sets the target and gets out of the way, who judges you on results, not activity, who doesn't care if you work 9 to 5 or midnight to 4 a.m., as long as the work gets done. That's not a lack of accountability. That's autonomy. And autonomy is where you do your best work. Because you're not wasting mental energy managing up. You're using all of it to manage the actual problem. Careers with high autonomy fit this need. Freelancing, entrepreneurship, remote roles with outcome-based evaluation. Anywhere you have ownership over your time and process. You're not avoiding collaboration. You're just structuring it intentionally instead of letting it default to constant interruption. And when you have that control, work stops feeling like something being done to you and starts feeling like something you're choosing to do. Number 3 is something most people don't warn you about. Customer-facing roles drain you faster than the work itself. You can handle hard work, long hours, difficult problems. What you can't handle is performing emotional labor for people who don't actually need it. Smiling when you don't feel like smiling. Pretending to care about small talk before getting to the actual point. Managing someone else's feelings while trying to do your actual job. That's not work. That's theater. And it's exhausting in a way that has nothing to do with effort. Here's what happens when a Sigma ends up in customer service, sales, or client-facing roles. The first few weeks are fine. You're learning systems, solving problems, helping people who actually need help. But then the repetition sets in. The same questions, the same complaints, the same conversations you've had 100 times, and you realize the job isn't about solving problems anymore. It's about making people feel good while you solve them. And that distinction matters. Because your brain doesn't get satisfaction from emotional reassurance. You get satisfaction from fixing things, from making systems better, from solving the root cause so the problem stops happening. But customer-facing work doesn't reward that. It rewards patience, empathy, the ability to explain the same thing 15 different ways without showing frustration. And those things don't come naturally to you. Not because you're incapable, because they don't align with how you process value. Those with a Sigma mindset have what psychologists call low agreeableness. That doesn't mean you're disagreeable. It means you prioritize truth over harmony, efficiency over politeness, getting it right over making people comfortable. And in customer-facing roles, that priority order is backwards. You're expected to prioritize the customer's emotional experience over the actual solution. To take longer on a call because rushing feels rude, even when the customer's problem could have been solved in 2 minutes. And it's not just customers, it's coworkers, managers, anyone whose feelings you're expected to manage as part of your job description. Every conversation becomes a calculation. What can I say that's true but won't offend them? How do I correct this without seeming harsh? How do I explain that their idea won't work without making it personal? That mental overhead compounds. And eventually, it takes more energy than the actual work. So you go home exhausted, not from what you did, but from how you had to act while doing it. Careers that minimize this make sense. Back-end roles, technical positions, anything where your interaction is with systems, data, or problems instead of people's emotions. You can still work with people. You just need those interactions to be functional, not performative. Strategy meetings where everyone's focused on outcomes. Collaborations where the work is the point, not the relationship. Environments where being direct is respected, not penalized. That's where you stop bleeding energy just to show up. Number 4 is brutal but true. Repetitive tasks make you want to quit, no matter the pay. You can handle doing something hard. You can't handle doing something pointless. Or worse, doing the same thing over and over when you've already proven you can do it. That's not work. That's punishment. And it doesn't matter if the pay is good. If the benefits are solid. If everyone tells you it's a stable career. If the work is repetitive, you'll hate it. And eventually, you'll leave. This probably showed up early. Maybe in school when you understood a concept after the first explanation, but had to sit through 3 more examples and 20 practice problems. Or in your first job when you mastered the task in a week, but had to keep doing it for months. Your brain checks out when there's nothing left to learn. When the process is fully mapped and there's no room for optimization or creativity. That's when work starts feeling like prison. People with a Sigma personality have low tolerance for boredom. Not because you're easily distracted, because your brain is wired to seek complexity. Repetition signals that there's nothing more to extract from the task. No growth, no improvement, just execution. And execution without learning feels meaningless. You need work that evolves, that presents new variables, that requires you to adapt and refine, not just repeat. This is why assembly line jobs, data entry, most administrative roles, or anything with rigid procedures kills Sigma slowly. You might last a few months, maybe a year if the money's good enough. But eventually, the monotony breaks you. You start making mistakes because you're not engaged. You feel your brain atrophying. And you realize you'd rather make less money doing something that keeps you sharp than stay comfortable doing something that numbs you. Careers that offer variety make sense. Consulting where every client presents different problems. Project-based work where you move on once something's built. Investigative journalism where every story requires new research. Restoration work where every piece has unique damage. Anywhere the work shifts enough that you're solving new problems instead of repeating old solutions. Even in seemingly repetitive fields, there are roles with more complexity. A surgeon who handles rare cases. A mechanic who specializes in diagnostics for unusual problems. A pilot who flies different aircraft or challenging routes. An agronomist dealing with varied soil conditions and crop challenges. That's how you stay engaged long-term. Not by finding work that's easy, by finding work that never gets stale. Number 5 is something most people don't understand. You'd rather master a skill than manage people. You've probably been offered management positions, maybe more than once, and everyone acts like it's a promotion you should want. More money, more responsibility, more authority. But when you think about what the job actually involves, it sounds like a nightmare. Endless meetings, performance reviews, mediating conflicts, motivating people who should already be motivated, dealing with HR issues that have nothing to do with the actual work. And you think, why would I want that? Because for you, mastery is the goal. Getting so good at something that you can see patterns others miss. That you can solve problems faster and more elegantly than anyone else. That your expertise becomes undeniable. That's satisfying. That feels like progress. But managing people, that's a completely different skill set. One that requires emotional intelligence, patience, and a tolerance for inefficiency that you just don't have. Here's what most companies get wrong. They assume the best individual contributors want to become managers. That career growth means moving away from the work you're good at and into supervising others doing that work. But for Sigmas, that's not growth. That's a lateral move into a job you're less suited for. You don't want to manage people. You want to be so good at your craft that management becomes irrelevant. Those with a Sigma mindset score low on extroversion and high on conscientiousness. That combination means you're self-directed. You don't need external motivation. You don't need someone checking in on you. And you definitely don't want to be the person checking in on others. You'd rather spend that energy going deeper into your field, becoming the go-to expert, the person who gets called in when nobody else can figure it out. That's the career trajectory that makes sense. This is why individual contributor tracks exist. Principal engineer, senior researcher, lead analyst, specialist roles where you advance without ever managing a team. You get the respect, the compensation, the influence, but you keep doing the work you're actually good at. And you don't have to waste time on the people management circus that would have made you miserable anyway. Here's the sixth thing. You excel when left alone to solve complex problems. Put a Sigma in a room with a hard problem and no interruptions, and they'll build you a solution most people wouldn't even know how to start. But put that same Sigma in an environment with constant interruptions, mandatory check-ins, and collaborative sessions every few hours, and they'll produce half the output at twice the mental cost. Not because they can't collaborate. Because collaboration, the way most workplaces do it, disrupts the deep work their brain needs to function at full capacity. Your brain doesn't multitask well, and it doesn't switch contexts without a cost. When you're deep in a problem, you're holding multiple variables in your head at once. You're running simulations, testing theories, seeing how pieces connect. That requires sustained attention, uninterrupted focus, the kind of mental space you only get when you're left alone long enough to actually think. But most modern work environments are built around the opposite: constant communication, regular updates, team syncs, all of it designed to keep everyone connected and responsive, which sounds good in theory. But in practice, it fragments your attention. Every interruption isn't just a 2-minute conversation. It's a reset. You lose the thread of what you were thinking. And it takes 15 to 20 minutes to get back to that depth. So if you're interrupted every hour, you never actually get there. This is why remote work or roles with high autonomy fit those with a Sigma personality so well. Not because you don't like people, because you need control over your attention. You need to be able to say, "I'm going dark for 3 hours," and actually have those 3 hours. No meetings, no messages, just you and the problem. That's where your best work happens. That's where you stop feeling like you're constantly playing catch-up and start feeling like you're actually making progress. This is why careers in engineering, scientific research, music production, writing, architecture, or any field that lets you disappear into deep focus makes sense for Sigmas. You're not avoiding teamwork. You're just structuring it in a way that doesn't destroy your ability to think. Async communication, scheduled collaboration, clear blocks of uninterrupted time. When the work environment respects how your brain operates, you don't just perform better. You stop feeling like work is a constant battle against your own wiring. Here's number 7. You thrive in roles where results speak louder than networking. You've sat through networking events. The ones where everyone's exchanging business cards and talking about synergy and asking what you do like it's the opening line to a scripted play. And you've thought, this is the worst possible way to build professional relationships. Because you're not good at small talk. You're not that good at remembering names and faces after one interaction. And you're definitely not good at pretending you care about someone's weekend when you're really just trying to leave. But in most industries, networking matters. Who you know opens doors. Relationships get you opportunities that qualifications alone won't. And that feels fundamentally unfair to you. Because your work should speak for itself. Your results should be enough. But they're not. Because most career advancement isn't meritocratic. It's social. And you're being penalized for not playing a game you never wanted to play. Sigmas value competence over likability. You respect people who are good at what they do, not people who are good at talking about what they do. And you assume others operate the same way. But they don't. Most people hire who they like, promote who they're comfortable with, give opportunities to people who feel familiar, not necessarily people who are most qualified. And that system locks you out unless you force yourself to become someone you're not. This is why people with a Sigma personality excel in fields where work is quantifiable, where your solution either works or it doesn't, where your research either holds up or it falls apart, where your analysis is either accurate or it's not. There's no room for politics when the metric is objective. You get promoted because you're the best, not because you're the most popular. And that alignment between skill and reward is what keeps you motivated. Careers in STEM fields, finance, legal work, or technical writing reward output over optics. You don't need to schmooze to succeed. You need to be right, consistently. And when you are, your reputation builds itself. People come to you because you deliver, not because you sold them on your personality. That's the career path that makes sense, where your introversion isn't a weakness you compensate for. It's irrelevant, because the work is what matters. Here's number 8. You need intellectual challenge, or you mentally check out. You've probably had jobs where the work was easy. Maybe too easy. The kind of job where you figured out the entire system in the first month and spent the next year basically on autopilot. And everyone told you that was great. Stable job, good pay, low stress, but you were miserable. Because easy isn't satisfying. Easy is boring. And boredom, for a Sigma, is a special kind of torture. Your brain needs problems to solve. Not just any problems. Hard ones. The kind that don't have obvious answers. That require you to learn new things. To think in ways you haven't thought before. To stretch your understanding until something clicks. That process is what keeps you engaged. When the work stops challenging you, it stops feeling like work worth doing. And no amount of money or job security makes up for that emptiness. This is why Sigmas often leave jobs that look perfect on paper, because the challenge is gone. They've optimized everything they can optimize, solved every problem worth solving, and now they're just maintaining, going through motions, doing work that doesn't require them to think. And that feels like wasting time, like running a high-performance engine in first gear. You're capable of so much more, but the environment won't let you use it. The Sigma brain has high openness to experience, specifically in the intellectual domain. That means you're driven by curiosity, by the need to understand, to master complexity. Jobs that cap your growth or limit your learning feel suffocating. You don't need constant novelty, but you need progression. You need to feel like you're getting better at something, like you're moving toward mastery, not just treading water. Careers that offer continuous learning make sense. Fields like advanced trades, medicine, financial analysis, filmmaking, skilled craftsmanship, agriculture technology, or anything in technology where the landscape constantly evolves. Anywhere the ceiling is high enough that you can spend years climbing and still see room to grow. That's where you stop clock watching, because the work itself becomes the reward. Here's the 9th one. Jobs that require fake enthusiasm destroy your soul. You've been in those situations. The ones where everyone's supposed to get excited about something that's clearly flawed, and everyone around you is nodding enthusiastically, saying things like absolutely and can't wait to see this happen. And you're sitting there thinking, we all know this won't work. Why are we pretending? But you can't say that, because saying that makes you the negative one, the person who's not supportive, who doesn't believe in the vision. So you learn to fake it, to nod along, to say the right things at the right times. And every time you do, a little part of you dies. Because you're not built to perform enthusiasm you don't feel. You're built to assess, to analyze, to tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable. People with a Sigma personality have high cognitive complexity. That means your brain doesn't just accept surface-level information. It cross-references. It looks for inconsistencies. It asks, Does this make sense? And when it doesn't, you can't just ignore that. You can't turn off the part of your brain that sees the problems everyone else is politely ignoring. So when you're forced to act excited about something you know is flawed, it's not just dishonest. It's cognitively dissonant. Your brain is screaming one thing while your mouth is saying another. And it's not just formal settings. It's anywhere performance trumps substance. A real estate agent hyping a property with foundation issues. A personal trainer pushing supplements they know don't work. A tour guide embellishing history to make it more entertaining. A social media manager hyping up a mediocre product launch. All of it requires a level of performative enthusiasm that feels like lying. And even when it's technically acceptable, it still feels wrong. Because you value accuracy, and accuracy doesn't require exclamation points. This is why Sigmas thrive in careers like legal work, auditing, scientific validation, quality control, or forensic roles, fields where accuracy matters more than enthusiasm. You don't need to hype up your product. You need it to work. You don't need to sell your research findings. You need them to be accurate. The work is the proof. And when the work is enough, you stop having to fake everything around it. And here's the 10th thing. Corporate politics feel like a waste of brain power. You've watched it happen. Someone takes credit for work they didn't do. Someone gets promoted because they played the game better, not because they performed better. Someone throws another person under the bus to protect their own reputation. And you think, how is this the system? How is this what we're optimizing for? We're supposed to be building products, serving customers, solving problems. Instead, we're spending half our energy navigating egos and alliances like we're in a medieval court. Corporate politics drain Sigmas faster than bad management, because politics require you to track social dynamics that don't affect the actual work. Who's in favor with leadership this quarter? Whose opinion you need to validate even when it's wrong? How to position your ideas so they sound like they came from someone else. All of that is noise. And your brain doesn't process noise well. It processes signal, data, outcomes, not the performative dance people do around outcomes. Here's what happens when a Sigma gets stuck in a political workplace. You try to ignore it at first. Just do good work and assume that's enough. But it's not. Because someone else is taking your work and repackaging it as their idea. Or your project gets killed not because it's bad, but because it threatens someone's territory. Or you get passed over for promotion because you didn't manage relationships the way you were supposed to. And you realize the game is rigged. Not by malice, by design. The system rewards political skill as much as technical skill. And you only have one of those. You could learn to play the game. Plenty of people do. But it feels like selling out. Like betraying the thing that makes you good at your job in the first place. Your honesty, your directness, your focus on what actually matters. So you don't play. And that limits your upward mobility in traditional corporate structures. Not because you're not capable. Because you refuse to waste energy on things that don't improve the work. This is why flat organizations, startups, or companies with strong engineering cultures fit Sigmas better. Places where politics exist but don't dominate. Where technical competence is the primary currency. Where you can be blunt in a meeting and people thank you for it instead of holding a grudge. Those environments are rare. But when you find them, you finally stop feeling like you're fighting two jobs. The actual work and the social performance required to do the actual work. If you made it this far, you're probably stuck in the wrong career right now. Or you've been there before, and you're trying to make sure you never go back. Either way, you know what it feels like when the fit is wrong. When every day is a fight against your own wiring, just to meet expectations that don't make sense. Here's what I want to know. Which one of these 10 hit hardest for you? Which one made you think, that's exactly why I can't stay in this job? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you want to understand this personality type on a deeper level, how it thinks, how it works, and why it sets you apart. Hit subscribe and join the biggest Sigma community on YouTube. Thanks for watching. If you want to continue, just click the video on your screen right here.